I'm Brittany, this is Wei Yang, and welcome to Gaywatch, where we watch gay things. Today is a long time coming, because today is the beginning of this four-part series where we look into and dissect beat by beat, moment by moment, and line by line, the love scenes from Thailand's unbelievably famous BL series, KinnPorsche's. Now, one of the things that I respect about the KinnPorsche's series is its commitment to their love scenes. With as flashy and fan servicey as KinnPorsche's can be, you would almost expect maybe some flimsier excuses to have a love scene, or maybe they would feel kind of cheap, but actually, no, the opposite of that. They actually don't have a love scene, a specific and explicit love scene, unless there is an overwhelming reason to have one. Every single one is necessary and earned and really communicates part of the story and relationship happening between the two characters at the time. It's impressive, actually, because a lot of these scenes are fairly complex when you're looking at the emotional angle from what these individuals and also the couple is going through, and how it's always dynamic. There's always a change by the end. And I love love scenes that are this good, that have this much thought put into them. I find them really, really fascinating to dig into and analyze and really turn on the character work and examine. So, let's examine the very first love scene in KinnPorsche's, the bathroom scene at the end of episode 4. Okay, here we are at the very top of the scene, because this is the transition shot from the hotel room to the hotel bathroom that we'll see in 2 seconds. All right, so I know I'm stopping right off the bat. So we get this establishing shot of the bathroom, as you would, to give us a layout of the whole thing so that we can be anchored in space as we zoom in and kind of travel through the bathroom. I think we wind up here kind of at the back and at the door, and by the end we've traveled all the way across the room, all the way up against the window. Nice pretty establishing shot. You have the trademark KinnPorsche yellow going on, along with the very beautiful teal and a couple of accents of red going on in the city throughout the window. And also, I'm also kind of a cinematography very much amateur, but it pleases me. Good composition of a shot really makes me happy. So I will probably also be pointing that out as well, just because not only do I love the content of what this scene does from a character perspective, but it was also filmed really beautifully and just captured really well. So I hope you're ready for that. Anyway, this right here, with this lovely purple circle around my cursor so you can hopefully see it better. This right around here is called a subframe, because the greater actual frame of the shot, which is the whole screen, which is everything you see, is the frame. So anytime you see characters, an object, anything that is further framed by something that is not just in the general frame of the whole screen, that's called a subframe. And I don't know why, but they make me happy. I love a good subframe. I also love it when shots have depth, and we literally go from the other side of the bathroom and you can see all the way through to the city. It's just a really pretty shot. They put some thought even into this just beginning shot that feels a bit basic, but is still set up very nicely. It might be because I'm a slut for a subframe, but you know, my video, my opinion. So, we start with... Those are the two first lines of dialogue as Kinn is wrestling Porsche, who is not the steadiest on his feet at the moment, actually into the bathroom and towards the shower. It's the closest Kinn gets to his starting goal, right? His objective at the point of this scene is not, I wonder if I can get in Porsche's pants. That's actually not on his radar. He is legitimately trying to get this boy in the shower, to clean him up, and then throw him in bed so he can sleep it off. Because remember, one of the most important things to remember is that Kinn doesn't think that Porsche remembers what happened at the dock. And so all of this behavior that Porsche is about to exhibit, Kinn is thinking is just because he's drugged. It's because he's not totally in his right mind right now, and he's just fucking with Kinn. He may even be fucking with Kinn because he's picked up that Kinn is into him, which is what Porsche continually asks throughout this scene, because Porsche genuinely wants to know, but Kinn doesn't know enough to believe that Porsche genuinely wants to know. He just thinks he's being fucked with. It still stays on this two-shot, as we've now cut in from the wide establishing shot to a two-shot. And a two-shot is just a character. Wow, a shot that features two characters. You see it all the time. And I love the very, what I now call the killer and healer approach, which means they've put stuff in front of the frame, like directly in front of the camera, so that we're having to look through things to peer in on what's happening. It tends to give a scene a little bit more feel of intimacy and privacy. And Killer and Healer does it all the time. They are a masterclass in just piling shit in front of the camera and having it look stunning every time. This looks a little bit less, let's how I say, poised than Killer and Healer does. This looks a bit more natural. And we can't even really tell what parts of whatever we're looking through. We just know that we're having to work a little bit to see the action that is going on beyond it. And even with just this line from Porsche that says, "Why did you take my clothes off?" With the way he says it, with his delivery and the fact that it remains in the two-shot, you know, this could be just an innocent question. Like, all of a sudden, you know, he's looking around and he's like, most of my clothes are off. What's up with that? It could be just a regular question. It doesn't necessarily have to be anything romantic or sexual. But then, also, quick note, Kinn annoyed, looks annoyed, seems annoyed, not really enjoying this. People don't really, you know, enjoy having to take care of difficult to handle inebriated people. But then Porsche says, they zoom in. They don't even zoom in when when Porsche first makes that sound of "hey," right? They wait until he's literally beginning the line, "So you want to see me naked," before they cut to the close-up of Porsche. Kinn's just trying to go about his own business to get this boy into a shower so that Porsche can shower. But now we have changed from, because like, "Oh, you want to see me naked" is very clearly a shift from, "Hey, where'd my clothes go?" That could have happened in kind of for any reason in any context, but now he's specifically making the, for lack of a better word, accusation that Kinn just wants to see him naked. And for that, we zoom in because that's a little bit more important. That's more on the nose. And despite, you know, Porsche's general lackadaisical attitude, and he's very smiley and laughy, that is actually his central question. He wants to know if Kinn wants to see him. He needs to know if Kinn is actually interested in him, or if Kinn just uses his bodyguards all the time and is a shit person. That deeply matters to Kinn to Porsche when we're talking about who Porsche is attracted to and Porsche's own seat of ideals. That's very important to him for people he's interested in. So much so that it's surfacing even at a time like this when he's still a bit loopy from having been drugged. This is the first time that Porsche makes this kind of accusation in the scene. It's the opening bam. And already we've experienced a shift in scene beats. So scene beats are basically, they're almost a unit of measurement in a way. In any given scene, there are several scene beats throughout it, and those are smaller sections that are usually denoted by a character's intent, or a character operating on current information and then learning something new, a shift in emotion. Way often it's a shift in objective or motivation for a character. There are lots of little scene beats throughout any given scene. And so at the start, these objective and the intent and the general impression was Kinn wants to get Porsche into the shower. But now things have changed a little bit, because now Porsche has brought up the possibility of some kind of sexual interest on Kinn's part. Porsche didn't say anything about himself. He specifically asked after Kinn. And so Kinn looks deeply annoyed. I mean, can you imagine you have a crush on a guy, and then that guy gets through a very fraught situation, and you're now just trying to get him to take care of himself and go to bed, and then out of nowhere, your crush accuses you of being into him, which you are, but that's not the point of your behavior. Like, it's a very, I understand. I feel Kinn's irritation at this point. And he's still on the shower bit. He ignores the question because he assumes that Porsche is just loopy and that he doesn't mean it, because why would he mean it? Because Porsche doesn't even remember what happened at the docks, right? So he's still on his shower kick. And then Porsche breaks away over to the window, distracted by all the pretty lights. And who could blame him? Thailand's gorgeous. But anyway, so now Porsche is distracted, and Kinn is still annoyed with that little shake of his head, because he's had a bit of a night. Porsche has definitely had a night. He just wants this to be over, and now this guy is across the room, completely far away from the shower, obsessed with lights. And then we have this kind of oddly adorable moment here, which is another shift in the scene, because Kinn trying to get Porsche into the shower, Porsche then dodges away, and then now we've shifted because Porsche's objective has shifted. At first he was like, Kinn, did you get me naked on purpose? And then he very ADD shifted over to, oh my God, pretty lights. Porsche's objective for the moment has changed, and that has led to another shift in the scene, and therefore we are in a new scene beat. Now we are in Porsche and the pretty lights scene beat. And there's yet another shift in the scene beats once he stumbles, and then Kinn has to cross the room to catch him. What I think is interesting about the Porsche being distracted by city lights moment is that Kinn is just watching this happen, and it's just further evidence that Porsche doesn't necessarily mean anything he's saying, that Porsche is just loopy and thinks lights are pretty and is jumping to conclusions when he sees that most of his clothes are gone. Not that he's trying to ask any kind of legitimate question. It just super reinforces the mistaken context that Kin currently believes. And this scene flows very well from one thing to the next. The scene beats flow very well together because Porsche dropping and Kin having to cross the room to catch him has then brought us back to the central question. We took a small break for Porsche to feel loopy, and then now we're right back to it. Now, for completely natural reasons, Porsche is thinking, oh, now you're touching me. Now you're touching me, and my clothes aren't really here. Like, are you into me? And just more further proof from Kin's perspective that Porsche is just loopy. Hang on, I am gonna go back for that moment in particular. Hang on, it's the fist clench from Kin. Kin's thoroughly just annoyed body language is beautiful. I mean, this two-shot is beautiful. I mean, they have that beautiful teal city behind them that's just windows. Whoever found this bathroom to film this scene in deserves a raise. Kin's body language is already high-key irritated, but then you have that fist clench moment. Let me like literally go back for a third time, and I'm gonna try to stop directly on it. This right here makes me go fucking feral because he's high-key irritated. And if anything, this fist clench is like, I mean, he's taken out guys, I'm sure, for being less irritating and doing less, let alone what's about to happen. He's trying to restrain himself. He's trying to stay calm because he knows that Porsche doesn't mean it. Not in his right mind at the moment, at least not totally. And just breathe, just get this guy in the shower. And that flex from both of his hands that's anxious and irritated is just such a good little unconscious movement on Miles' part in his portrayal of Kin. And just something about that detail just really, I love it. I love it so much. Also, if you would like to talk about composition, they even made sure to get this shot at an angle to where the city behind them complements the shape that they're making. Kin is still standing, and they both of them make this general shape right here. And they have taken care to shoot this at an angle to which the city skyline complements this shape and almost frames them, you would say, but at the very least kind of just emphasizes and complements the central image that we're looking at for something that is very aesthetically pleasing. Bang on, 10 out of 10. And then, once again, this is technically the third time that Porsche has made this accusation. 1, you wanted to see me naked. 2, oh my god, you're touching me again. 3, just straight up this time, you like me, don't you? Right? You like me, don't you? And then, because I want to get the whole of... Kin, obviously not taking this question seriously, because why would you, from his perspective, deflects. Once again, deflects, but also lies. But also kind of doesn't lie, because here's the thing. When he says, my type is nice guys, not like you, One, grade A deflection. You didn't actually answer the question. And two, he knows that Porsche is nice. Porsche is a nice guy. He's seen him be completely nice. Porsche got his brother, who had been a shut-in from trauma, to leave the house. Like, he knows what a nice guy Porsche is. But he's deflecting and lying to Porsche's face to be like, I like not nice guys, not like you, even though you're totally a nice guy and I'm completely lying through my teeth right now. So it's just such an interesting way that he deflected this question while also like low-key giving himself away, since we know that Porsche is indeed like one of the nicest guys. And then Kinn at this point now has like shot men for less. I'm mostly assuming, but it's a pretty safe bet, I feel. And now we have progressed. Now we've escalated. There has been a very a nice uptick to this scene right from the beginning. We've been increasing in tension, and we've been increasing in the ways that Porsche is crossing boundaries, whether or not he would cross them if he was 100% sober. He's crossing them now. He's just bringing up this, emotional, romantic, and sexual shit right in front of Kinn's salad in a way that Kinn can entirely write off as just being loopy. But the escalation comes from now, instead of just making verbal accusations, Porsche has actually now reached out and touched. That is a significant escalation. And a lot of scenes operate on a general, rise in tension. It all kind of depends where the, no pun intended, climax of the scene is. Because it's not always going to be at the end. Sometimes the majority of a scene's point lies in the fallout of something. So maybe the height of the drama or the turn or the information is towards the beginning, and then we get to see the characters deal with that. In this case, most likely because this does turn into an actual sex scene, the tension of the scene does build, not unlike the act of sex builds, foreplay, increasing physical intimacy, and then climax. Like, yeah, it mirrors that. I won't say most, but a lot of sex scenes or scenes that lead into sex scenes do this for very obvious dramatic parallel reasons. Going back, because I want to make sure. Liar. And see, Porsche knows that he's lying, or at least deeply suspects that Kinn is lying. He thinks that Kinn is into him, he's just not sure. He makes this joke about, oh, so that's why, like, Kinn is not hard in this moment. He is, in fact, the opposite of hard. Because he's more irritated than interested in anything romantic going on. Porsche attributes that to, oh, I guess you really don't like me since, he's soft, but now I've groped you. Kinn is trying to be noble and normal about this. He's not trying to take advantage of this situation. It's not on his mind at the moment at all. It is actually Porsche who's doing all of the boundary pushing, because Porsche is not in his right mind. We all know this. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It takes his hand being directly smacked away in order for, Porsche to be like, oh, that irritates you, really? And then now Porsche's getting into a very true character trait of his, and he's poking the bear. And he really enjoys doing that kind of in any context, but especially here, it would seem. I love that reaction from Kinn as well. God, Mile, you drive me nuts. He's still so restrained, and he's just giving Porsche all the leeway in the world. Had it been anyone else in a fully sober context, they'd be dead. All of the nonverbal moments from Kinn in this scene really hit it out of the park. And once again, there's been an escalation. So now we've gone from verbal accusation to I'm touching you to I'm now making you touch me. And Kinn, still not swayed because, of course, as we have now said many times, from Kinn's POV, it's just a guy being loopy and confrontational and inappropriate. He's not, Porsche isn't speaking from any actual desire or asking questions he actually wants answers to. He doesn't even remember what happened on the dock. Why would he ask these questions for any deliberate reasons? This is just a very annoying coincidence because, you know, normally I am into this guy. It's such a tough situation for Kinn to be in.
That's a good idea.
And he tells him to focus. He's becoming more and more baffled, Kinn, but he's still at this point just trying to get the guy in the shower. Now it's decidedly not funny anymore. Now it's gotten serious. Now this is the escalation from Porsche smiling and laughing and joking around and crotch grabbing, which is obviously inappropriate. But now we've shifted into something serious. The smile vanishes when Porsche actually lands his head on Kinn's chest, and Kinn senses the change. He kind of senses something maybe not quite bullshit, not quite just because he's loopy, just something just a little genuine comes through in that moment. And it's actually something, Porsche's head on Kinn's chest becomes like a recurring thing throughout the rest of the series. It's like Porsche's fucking favorite place to be. And who could blame him, right? And this is the very beginning of it. I love that it becomes a recurring thing just because this moment really shifts things. This is one of, not the most, we'll get there, but it's one of the really pivotal moments in this scene. And arguably, in my opinion, it's kind of also the most blatantly erotic. I mean, when you're following Porsche's kind of face journey through that moment, it clearly feels really good to him to have his face and his head on Kinn's chest like that. It takes him to another place. It cuts through his kind of usual jovial nature that we all know him for and all of his lightheartedness, and it takes him to somewhere where he's really serious about this, and that he really does feel this attraction, which is a significant moment for him because, as we find out later in the series, he's never been interested in a guy before. This is all entirely new territory for him. And so a moment like this where he just experiences just the pure desire for another man is a shift that we don't even grasp the full meaning of until later. And then that becomes a recurring kind of safe, comfy place for Porsche to return to when they are an actual established couple later on in the series. One of my favorite moments in this scene, absolutely. And it makes Kinn curious. It makes him start to think for a second, maybe he's not entirely bullshitting me. even though he doesn't remember the doc, right? He does. Even though he doesn't remember the doc, maybe he's kind of serious? That felt serious. And so now he's thinking, and again, just the Miles' internal life as Kin is so good. We see him shift. We see Kin shift as well into considering it. And then we watch him internally decide to test Porsche a little bit to see how maybe he would handle this. And he hesitates right there. You see him lean in, but then he kind of sways away for a second because he's not sure, but he takes the plunge anyway. And he's still not sure. Look at that face. He doesn't know what Porsche is going to do. He's not entirely sure that what he experienced when Porsche had his head on Kin's chest. Kin's still not sure exactly how real that was, but it felt real enough for him to do this test, to see how Porsche responds to this. This look of just pure, I don't know, man. I don't know what you're gonna do. I don't know what this is. Especially since I don't think you remember what happened at the docks and the conversation that we had. And of course the kiss we shared. But any of that. It screams. This still screams. I don't know, man. I don't know. What are you gonna do? He's dialed in on Porsche and however Porsche is about to respond. And that's a whole moment. That's a whole beat unto itself. Is now Kin has kissed Porsche as this test. It's like, what are you going to do now? And we have this pause where you almost want to hold your breath as this beautiful music plays underneath the scene, which, by the way, all of the music in this scene is gorgeous. So many times, a perfectly valid gay love scene in a Thailand BL or an East Asian BL will be summarily ruined by some kind of awful or cheesy or unsuitable music playing over it or underneath it. And kudos to KinnPorsche's for just setting an example. It's just some nice, dramatic, quiet piano as this dynamic plays out. And it's beautiful and it's subtle. You kind of wouldn't expect it from the way that KinnPorsche can go so over the top. But here they dial it back. They dial it in. And I appreciate that so much. So now we're in this moment of what's Porsche going to do? And we know, because of dramatic irony, who's interested in who and who remembers what. But they don't. And so this pause is actually kind of mostly for Kin's benefit. Kin gets to kind of hang in gay limbo for a second to see what's about to happen. It's also, and I will rewind this, it's also a test that he flinches away from because in that moment, they had eye contact after that kiss. And it was almost like a staring contest, or really like a dare. And even though Kin was the one who initiated it this time and started this test, he's the one who flinches first. And that's super important for the following reason, but let's watch him. So now they're at eye contact. Porsche isn't looking away. Porsche is dead ass serious. This is the most serious we have ever seen this boy, right? He is dead ass serious. He's not flinching and he's not looking away. He is here in this moment and is ready on some level to admit what's going on between them. Kin, not knowing what to fucking think at this point, loses. He looks away first. He flinches, which is a big part of why Porsche reacts to the flinch the way he does. It almost looks like Kin at first thinks that Porsche is going to, I don't know, deck him, put his head through a window, something decidedly non-romantic. And he's not expecting fully any kind of actual reciprocation. So he kind of yanks and pulls away. But Porsche is like, no, you flinched. And I know that you are into me. I know that you're interested. I know you have feelings for me. And you shouldn't be fucking flinching away from them. He hates it when people pull shit like that. It's disingenuous. He calls him a punk here. But after asking my Discord and consulting a more English colloquial version of the subtitles for this series, he doesn't actually call him a punk because, as we all know, the official subtitles like to soften the harsher language in this series. And so he's not actually calling him a punk there. It's another P word, but basically he's calling him a coward because he was. Kin bowed out at that moment, and he was a coward. He was not facing what's happening. Ends Kin's entire life. And now, because once again, escalation on top of escalation on top of escalation. Every time it escalates, Kin gets more confused. Even though now he is actually taking an active part in trying to figure this out himself. Now his whole life has been fucking ended, right? Because the guy he was interested in just laid the kiss of a century on him. But he still can't be sure. So now, look at his face. He's so confused at this moment. This poor gay man is trying so hard to make sense of it. Because he doesn't have all the pieces. He even wipes it off. See, and this doesn't help. Porsche returning to the, smiley, goofy, instigating version of himself that's going on right now doesn't help Kin because they just had a serious moment about this. Oh my god, that kiss felt way too real. But now he's just back to being a loopy guy again. So what the fuck does that mean in Kin's brain? It's a rat's nest of about a million different things going on in this man's mind. And now he's just been called out on the fact that he has a hard-on from that kiss. And so now it's a little bit of embarrassment piling on top of everything else that's going on in his head. And you see it play out on Kin's face. Mile really just showed up and fucking showed off on Kin's interior life in this scene in particular. Now we have gotten to a much more honest version of the central question than we've ever gotten. It used to be, oh my god, where did my clothes go? To, other roundabout things, to something more direct like, you like me. And now it's like, just admit that you like me. Just admit that there are feelings here. You have feelings for me. Admit to them, please. And that whole inhale from Kin about how he's still not sure. He's like, I don't know. You're back to being the loopy bastard again. And he's still not entirely convinced that what's going on is genuine. And
มึง
then,
ยอมรับมาเถอะว่ามึงชอบกูไม่ไงท่าน้ำมึงจะจูบกูทำไม
boom! Game changer. The most pivotal moment in the scene. And you can tell because just before the line is said, the music stops dead. We are in perfect silence for when Porsche says that line. When Porsche finally acknowledges that he remembers what happened at the pier, it all changes. Everything rearranges in Kinn's brain, as you can see. It was such a subtle facial change, but you still watched his whole brain rearrange as it continues to rearrange. More dead silence. Porsche is now just head back, relaxed, and just waiting. He just seems to be waiting as the cosmos rearrange in Kinn's head. Because, like I think I mentioned it just for a quick second before, but like I said, it's not just about Porsche remembering that they kissed on the pier, although obviously that's very important. It's about everything else they shared in that scene on the pier. They really... Kinn admitted things to him that he likely doesn't really admit to anyone else. He can't really afford to. He's pretty lonely and isolated. He doesn't have many people around him that he can just open up to, if really anyone. And Porsche opened up about himself as well. They shared something emotionally intimate in addition to their first physically intimate interaction when they shared their first kiss there on the dock. And similar to how it happened on the dock, it's about to happen again, except it's going to have much more far-reaching consequences. So now, for Kinn, everything has changed. Now, everything that has happened up to this point is cast in a completely different light. Because this is a guy who remembers the pier. And so all of that questioning and all of that, oh, you like me, you're into me, you're touching me again, just admit that you like me, is coming from that Porsche. The Porsche that he absolutely has feelings for and knows has feelings for him. And just the fact that now he knows that Porsche remembers that and has still clearly been down with the idea of them, everything shifts. And now Kinn moves into the tunnel vision that tends to happen with him right before he kisses Porsche. It happened in the pier scene, right before he kissed Porsche. It's like you can see everything. Everything else leaves Kinn's mind. Everything else leaves his brain. He just tunnel visions in on Porsche and how drawn to him he is and how interested in him he is and just all the feelings that are coming up for him. And then he just acts. Even though on the pier, Porsche was drunk. But he seems to forget everything for a second. And just pure intuition and desire possesses him. And then he winds up taking a step forward that, while consensual, still probably shouldn't have taken. And it happened on the dock. And it's about to happen again. And that becomes the central issue between them for the next, 2 episodes. And it takes a lot for this issue to be resolved, as it should. But, coming back to this moment in particular, we see the tunnel vision happen, and then a second test almost. He leans in much slower this time. The music has come back in. And he's watching for what Porsche is going to do. But it's just the fact that it's much slower and it's much more cautious and it's much gentler. It has none of the, well, do something with this then energy of the first time that Kin kissed Porsche in this scene. It's a much more thoughtful and intimate gesture. And now they're actually on the same wavelength. And this is then what turns into the actual sex scene. Now that we're on the same page and all of these feelings are being acknowledged, they take a leap forward that they probably shouldn't have. They get carried away. Obviously, Kin, especially, because Kin's the one who's stone cold, sober and in his right mind. So it's mostly Kin who gets carried away to greater effect in the following episodes. It's a beautiful kiss, by the way. Oh my god. Like, I'm blind. It's so beautiful. And then we immediately go into your quote-unquote more standard approach when it comes to sex scenes, which is now, in order to get the most visceral effect possible, we are going to zoom in on body parts and skin, etc., and focus on that to put you in the moment as much as possible. But I just want to shout out this shot. Hang on. This right here. It's my favorite shot in the whole scene. It's beautiful. We still get, even though their heads are cut off, we still have kind of the groundbreaking, the oh my god, it's happening thing of the fact that they're kissing is still kind of front and center, even if it's mostly cast in shadow. But that just makes it like beautifully not really teasing, because there's more, this sequence has more of a sense of emotion than just like titillation or anything like that. It's just purely beautifully like erotic. That's just what it is. And you also have the beautiful light being cast across their skin and their necks, and it's just a gorgeous shot. But once again, keeping in mind the trademark KinnPorsche's yellow mixing and mingling with the teal in the city beyond. So even then you have a more visually balanced shot, and it's just gorgeously framed. It's so beautiful. It's erotic art is what this shot is, honestly. Like the whole sequence when put together, duh, but this shot in particular, it's so good. It's so good. I cannot talk about it enough. Zooming in on body parts, hand across it. That is what I wanted to talk about. And the following things that happen. It's the body worship from Kin to Porsche is one of the many things in this scene that becomes a recurring theme with them in later scenes and throughout the rest of the series. The pure, unfiltered body worship that Kin just unleashes on Porsche at any given opportunity is truly a sight to behold. I love that they established that as part of their dynamic, an unspoken part of their like relationship dynamic. Impeccable. So good. And that shot as well that I just, hang on. We'll go back. We'll actually get that. That also, the first time I saw this, as I was like slack-jawed, because I don't think any of us expected to get love scene this early, which just feeds into the greater plot of their relationship because it does happen a bit early. But I remember the first time I saw this, I actually thought that Kinn was giving Porsche a blowjob at this point because Porsche is so far gone. Obviously, the shot exists. They have a focus on it, but at the same time, they're doing the killer and healer thing again. And we are partially, actually very obscured for most of the shot in terms of what's going on. So I thought they were alluding to something a little bit more explicit happening. But then when they cut away, it's body worship and not of the blowjob variety. But they really dial in on the body worship, which is why it's so satisfying that it remains a thing and that it's not just here in the first one. They establish a lot of things that carries through, and that is dramatically and romantically satisfying. What is it about when the bottom turns around in any gay sex scene? What is it about that moment? I mean, in this case, the first time I saw this, I screamed because even though they were very much, making out and getting down to business, I still wasn't entirely sure if they were gonna actually have sex. So when Porsche turns around, I just about lost my damn mind. But also, just in general, in sex scenes, why is that always such a moment? At least in my brain. I guess it's because, okay, now we're going to get down to business in a wordlessly hot kind of way. I don't know. Maybe this is just me. But whenever the bottom turns around, it's always a pivotal moment in my head. Also, just in this shot in general, they're showing us the tattoo on Porsche's shoulder, and they're giving emphasis on that, which, thank you. I both needed and wanted that. More body worship. What I love, where is it? Show it to me. Thank you. The hands. I've articulated everything about this scene, but when it comes to the hands, my mind goes blank. Something about the way that they are hanging on for dear fucking life, pun intended, makes everything that's happening that much more intense somehow. And I don't even know, I wouldn't be able to point to any kind of intentional thing that these filmmakers were doing to make me think this. This is just going off of pure intuition. But every time I see that, in the way that they are gripping hands in this scene, it always makes me think of, yeah, they're going to have to hold on to each other that hard if they're going to get through the rest of the series. I don't know why my brain goes there, but that's exactly what I think. Every time. So on top of it just generally adding to the intensity of what's happening, both physically and emotionally, that's just what I think every time. They're going to have to be that committed if they're going to get through what comes next. And I thought that even the first time I saw it. So maybe it's not just me, but that's what my brain did. And then just one last little quick note about that. One, they, in the second to last shot, they made a focus to still have hands happening, even though it was no longer on the left side, it was on the right side. So really added the emphasis of the hands there for all of the aforementioned reasons. But also the thing about this establishing shot into the next scene, this transitional shot, into the next scene, I love that it goes from out of focus to snapping back into focus. That just speaks to what just happened. Everything just got really messy, really fast, and everything got a little blurry. Everything got a little hazy. We may have jumped ahead a few steps in this relationship development. Everything just a little out of focus. And then now to transition from that very visceral, emotional, physical place, they had their transition shot start out of focus and then dial back in so that we can move on to how this scene ends, which is how this episode ends, which is very, you know, Vegas foreboding, psychotic looking things. But that's it. That is how the scene ends. And it's beautiful. It's complicated. It's, for the umpteenth time, messy as hell. But there's also something really true about it. There's something very real at work there. Yes, this is messy and not ideal, but it's a plot point. It sets up conflict. It's a narrative decision rather than what I think we're so used to, unfortunately, with a lot of BL series, especially in the earlier days of BL, where it would be not very well communicated, and it would be an entirely different case. So I think we were all kind of waiting for it to go very bad between them and in a moment like this, but then the show wound up having the necessary sensitivity to actually handle a plot point like this rather than really, really mess it up. So once again, kudos and thanks to the KinnPorsche's team for handling this very well. That is it for this analysis. I hope you found it interesting or enlightening, or maybe the scene finally makes sense to you on some level. I hope you gleaned some information maybe from this, or some interpretive points that maybe you hadn't thought of before. I very much enjoyed putting this video together. It's a bit different from what you usually find on my channel, but I find it very, very rewarding to actually be able to stop and zero in on the moments that I find particularly interesting and taking them apart in terms of how queer relationships are portrayed. If you liked this video, please give it a share because it is something outside of my usual purview. I don't know if you guys would want to see the other 3 videos that could be in the series or not. I don't know. You have to tell me. So please like this video if you like it, comment if it made you think about something, and share it with someone who you think might enjoy it. And then hopefully, much sooner rather than later, I will be able to put together an analysis just like this for the second love scene in the KinnPorsche's series. So thank you so much for watching. I will hopefully see you very soon for the series, and please remember to take care of yourself.